is heart of a goat. Okay, it is covered by the pericardium. We are going to cut the pericardial layer. This outer fibrous pericardium. So we are removing the pericardium here. So it is encircled. So the base and the apex of the heart, everything, it is covered by the pericardium. So we have removed the pericardium. And now this is the sternocostal surface of the heart, and this is the diaphragmatic surface of the heart, and this is base of the heart, and this is the apex of the heart. Okay, this is about the heart of a goat. Heart of the beef. So this is how huge it is. So this is the shape of the heart's goat, and this is about the beef's heart. So this is the shape of the heart. And the human heart, again, in each individual it varies in size. This is and all during dissection we have taken all the heart specimens. So this is all human heart. So the size differs in each individuals. Heart, the great vessels, and then this is called as apex of the heart. This is right border of the heart, this is left border of the heart, this is the inferior border of the heart, this is the sternocostal surface, and then diaphragmatic surface. Now coming to the great vessels, you have pulmonary trunk in front. This is the pulmonary trunk in front, and then you have the aorta. This is the aorta, ascending aorta, arch of aorta, and then it continues as descending aorta. Coming to the branches of arch of aorta, on the right side you have the common trunk. This is called as right brachiocephalic trunk, which divides into two branches. One is right subclavian artery, another is right common carotid artery. On the left side you have direct branches from the arch of aorta. One is left common carotid, another is left subclavian artery. So we have three branches. On the right side it is right brachiocephalic trunk, on the left side it is left common carotid, and then left subclavian artery. So coming to the arterial supply of heart, we have two main arteries. They are called as coronary arteries. One is right coronary artery and next is left coronary artery. Both the coronary arteries, they take origin from the aorta, that is the ascending aorta. The ascending aorta has three main valves. They are called as aortic valves. Above the aortic valves you have the dilatation. They are called as aortic sinuses. So from the aortic sinus you have origin of the coronary artery. Coming to the right coronary artery, the right coronary artery takes origin from the anterior aortic sinus of ascending aorta. It can be identified between the right auricle and the pulmonary trunk. After its origin, it can be identified between the right auricle and then pulmonary trunk. And then it descends down along the AV groove. This is called as atrioventricular groove, right atrium and then right ventricle. Between these two you have a sulcus or groove. It is called as right atrioventricular groove. The right coronary artery, it descends along the AV groove and then reaches the inferior margin of the heart. Till here this is called as first segment of right coronary artery, and then it runs posteriorly along the posterior AV groove. Here it is called as second segment of artery. From here it gives a main branch. It is called as posterior interventricular artery. This is the interventricular groove and then along the posterior aspect. So here it gives a main branch that is called as posterior interventricular artery. Why posterior interventricular artery is important is the patient or the person in which the posterior interventricular artery arises from the right coronary artery, they are called as right coronary dominant. 90% of individuals have right coronary dominance, whereas 10% of individuals, the posterior interventricular artery can arise from left coronary artery and they becomes the left coronary dominant. There is another term, it is called as balanced coronary dominance, where the posterior interventricular artery, it will be a branch from the exact point between where the right coronary artery and the left coronary artery meets. It can be a branch from that area. So in 1% of individual, it can be a balanced coronary dominance. The branches of right coronary artery, the right coronary artery, it will give a first branch that is called as conus artery. This part of pulmonary trunk is called as conus or infundibulum. Okay. So the right conus artery arises from right coronary artery, and then it will give some atrial branches. It it can give some auricular branches also to the right auricle. They are called as auricular branches, and then it supplies one more branch to the SA node. It is called as SA nodal artery, and then it supplies the right atrium. They are called as right atrial branches, and then it gives certain branches to the right ventricle. They are called as ventricular branches, and then when it reaches the margin, inferior margin, so it gives a large branch that is called as right marginal artery, which reaches the apex of the heart, which runs along the anterior surface. It reaches the inferior margin, and then it reaches till the apex of the heart. And then when it goes posteriorly, here it gives the posterior interventricular artery. The left coronary artery, it is a branch from the again ascending aorta. It arises from left posterior aortic sinus. It is called as coronary sinus, left posterior aortic sinus, and then it can be traced between the left auricle. This is the left auricle, and this is the pulmonary trunk. It can be traced between here. This is called as trunk of left coronary artery. After running for a short distance, it divides into two main branches. One is left anterior interventricular artery, otherwise called as left anterior descending artery by the clinicians, and one more artery, it is called as left circumflex artery, which winds around the left border of the heart and goes posteriorly. So the first branch, the main branch, is the left anterior interventricular artery. The left anterior interventricular artery, it runs along anterior interventricular groove. This is right ventricle and this is the left ventricle. In between these two you have a groove. This is called as interventricular along the anterior surface. So it is called as anterior interventricular groove. So left anterior interventricular artery runs along the anterior interventricular groove, and then it reaches the apex of the heart. And then one more vein, the vein which is accompanying the left anterior interventricular artery, it is nothing but the great cardiac vein. The great cardiac vein continues as coronary sinus. The great cardiac vein, it is the formative tributary for the coronary sinus. The coronary sinus is the important venous drainage of the heart, and then finally the coronary sinus drains to the right atrium. Okay, and then the branches of the anterior interventricular artery includes the diagonal artery. This is called as diagonal artery, left diagonal artery, and then it can give the ventricular branches, and then it will give some branches to the interventricular septum. Here you have the interventricular septum on the inner aspect. So the anterior 2/3 of interventricular septum, it is actually supplied by LAD. Why it is important here? Because the most common cause of myocardial infarction, we call it as the atherosclerosis. The atherosclerotic block can affect LAD, that is left anterior descending artery. Around 40 to 50% of block happens in the LAD. So that what happens is the arterial supply to the interventricular septum, anterior 2/3 of septum, is also affected. Why anterior interventricular septum is important is because we have the conducting system, that is the left bundle branch. It is located in the interventricular septum. So when it is devoid of blood supply, even the conducting system is going to be affected. Branch, it is called as left circumflex artery. The left circumflex artery, it runs along the left border of the heart, and then it runs posteriorly in the posterior surface of atrioventricular groove, and then finally it forms an anastomotic channel with the right coronary artery. It ends by forming an anastomotic channel with the right coronary artery. The left circumflex artery gives marginal arteries. It can give some marginal arteries. One is called as oblique marginal artery, and then another one marginal artery is called as left marginal artery. All the marginal arteries and all the ventricular branches and then left atrial branches, they arise from the left circumflex artery. And also you have one more AV nodal artery. The AV nodal artery, it is mainly from the right coronary artery. Sometimes it can be a branch from the left coronary artery also. It ends by anastomosing with the right coronary artery. Whereas the LAD ends by anastomosing with the, again here you have the posterior interventricular branch, and then here you have the anterior interventricular branches. Both it will form an anastomotic channels here. Thank you. See about the interior of right ventricle. This is right auricle. Here you have the right atrium. This is the right ventricle. What we have done is we have made an incision along the pulmonary trunk. We have made an incision along the pulmonary trunk, and then right to the interventricular groove, and then we have opened the right ventricle here. This is the right ventricle, and then you can see the trabeculae carneae. The trabeculae carneae, it can contain ridges, bridges and all, and then you can see the papillary muscles here, and then cusp. These are the cusp, and then these are the papillary muscles, and these are the cardiae tendinae. Called as coronal section, and then you can see the 4-chambered heart here. You have the right atrium, left ventricle, and then right ventricle. Compare the thickness of the walls of the right ventricle with the left ventricle. The walls of the left ventricle are very much thicker when compared with the walls of right ventricle. And you have a septum here. You can see the muscular part of the interventricular septum, and this is the membranous part of interventricular septum. Above that you have the bulbar part of interventricular septum. Embryologically, the muscular part, it is derived from the bulboventricular sulcus or bulboventricular ridge, and then the membranous part, that is the membranous part of the septum, it is actually derived from the AV cushions. AV cushions, actually they are derived from endocardial cushions. You have the right AV cushion and then left AV cushion. They will unite in the midline to form the septum intermedium or endocardial cushions. From the endocardial cushions, there will be the cells derived, and then it is going to close the interventricular foramen. That's how the membranous part of interventricular septum is formed. And then the bulbar part of interventricular septum, it gets the contribution from the bulbar part of proximal bulbar septum. The proximal bulbar septum, actually it will help in the formation of spiral septum, which will divide the truncus arteriosus into ascending aorta and the pulmonary trunk. So from the proximal bulbar septum, you have the bulbar part of interventricular septum. The interventricular septum, it is not exactly straight, it is actually S-shaped septum. Yes, the S-shaped septum. Okay, and coming to the left ventricle, here you can see the papillary muscles. Now in the left ventricle you have only 2 papillary muscles. One is called as anterolateral papillary muscles and then posteromedial papillary muscles. So now you can see the anterolateral and then posteromedial papillary muscles. All these are trabeculae carnae, and then you can see the cardae tendinae here, and then it is connecting to the cusp. Here we have made a section here, and then we are opening the ventricular chambers. So I have opened the ventricular chambers, and then you can able to see appreciate the interventricular septum here, and then with the wall thickness, this is right ventricle and this is left ventricle. Again I am going to talk only about the papillary muscles here. You have 2 group of muscles. One is anterolateral group of muscles, papillary muscles. They are seen on the sternocostal surface, whereas the posteromedial group of papillary muscles, they are seen on the diaphragmatic surface of the left ventricle. And you can compare the thickness of the papillary muscles here. Here you can have the thickened papillary muscles, and then you can see the cardae tendinae here and all, and then it is connecting to the aortic cusp here. Again I am opening the ventricular chambers, and you can appreciate the interventricular septum. It is a S-shaped septum, and then you can see the anterolateral papillary muscles and then posteromedial papillary muscles, and then you can see the cardae tendinae, and these are the aortic cusp. The left ventricle, you can appreciate the papillary muscles, and then you can appreciate the cardae tendinae, and then you can appreciate the aortic sinuses also here. This is the aortic opening where you have the 3 aortic sinuses. These are called as aortic sinuses of Valsalva. These are called as aortic sinus of Valsalva. These are the aortic sinus of Valsalva, where you have 2 coronary sinus and then 1 is non-coronary sinus.